Okay, so here's the continuance of that meeting, and here is City Manager Joe Sloscum brainwashing the public to look at all the documents he's gotten together for me. Mind you, I asked for 7 or 8 zoning conditions. Should be like 7 pages, if that. All right, here we go.
But that'll be here tomorrow for an informal roundtable from 1:30 to 2:30. I think he's also speaking at Belfast Rotary tomorrow. I'm sorry about this, but I want to tell you what this is below me. In October, Lori Allen filed a Freedom of Information request. I complied with it. This is the material I pulled from Ms. Allen. On December 2nd, I made her aware that it was available for inspection at any time, that I'd spent 19 hours of my time going through it and putting it together as conscientiously as I could. She has never taken advantage of coming to see any of it, in spite of invitations to do so. I did receive a recent request for her again for additional information about lawsuits. She sent me an article about Californians against lawsuit costs and abuse. And I did talk with the city attorney. I'm very busy at this time of year with the budget. Californians against lawsuit costs and abuse. And I did talk with the city attorney. I'm very busy at this time of year with the budget and other projects for spring. It's probably the busiest time of year we are. And I did ask her to provide us with some payment. So if we're going to go dig this out, she hasn't paid for the copies I made for her 4 months ago. She hasn't come in and looked at anything. I don't want to go do this in vain again. So the city attorney said it is appropriate under state law to ask somebody to pay an hourly rate to search records that are not easily available. One of the things she wants is every lawsuit we've ever been involved with since 2011 broken down by how much it costs. We don't get legal bills. I've explained to her saying this part of the bill is for this lawsuit, this part of the bill is for this easement, this part of the bill is for advice to a department head on the human resource thing. So we have to go through all the legal bills for 5 years. And that's going to take time, and I just can't do it. And so I did ask her, and I'm sorry I had to ask her, but again, I want you to see what's been in my office for 4 months, waiting for her to come in and inspect. She has not done it, and I'm putting it back tomorrow because I need the space again.
I just have a question. Could you shed some light on what it is we've asked her for money for, and what, I want to be clear, that as I understand it, there's a few dollars she owes for some copies here.
Right.
But we're not saying she has to even pay that money before she sees it. She just owes it to us.
Right. She owes us $7.65 for the 51 copies I made for her last November. She hasn't paid it. She hasn't come in to see it. We've offered her, please come in and make arrangements to see it. But after 4 months of leaving it out there, I need my office space back. All these files are going back into the file cabinet. And she hasn't, and I told her this last week, and she hasn't said, gee, I'd really like to come in and see those files. So they're going back. And now I've asked her to give us some money if we're going to spend the time going to do a search again. And I'm sorry to have to resort to that, but I just don't know what else to do. We must have at least 25 to 40 Freedom of Information requests from this individual, and I do my best to comply with them, but I can't do it and not have it mean anything, and I just don't have the personal time to do it now. So I wanted you to know that.
Mike. You know, I know somebody who came to a council meeting, didn't know anything about anything, and they were convinced that Lori Allen has a perfect case, and that we're dead wrong after being here for 3 minutes and never knowing what it was all about. I said, well, you ought to look into it. I feel I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I know all counselors, including people that Lori thinks we should all be firing. Today's April Fool's Day. I'm not going to suggest we do that. The basic truth of this is that we disagree with Lori. She has made her case. We have looked at it in depth. I think every one of us has. and we disagree with her conclusions. We don't think what she says is our fault or responsibility, and that's the essential disagreement. Great Britain is having these incredible floods this year because of climate change, and all you got to do is look at it's raining more, that there's more rain, and that makes little streams run deeper. So when she asks things like, I half expected her to ask for schedules of every employee and what day offs they all. It's easy to make these kind of requests, but to what end? And I think that's why, if somebody's here observing this and we don't answer her, that's why, because we've come to loggerheads with her. We can't find a way to agree with her on something. I do want to say that after she was here a couple of weeks ago, the next day I drove up Seaview Terrace, and I went, wow, this road is in bad shape. And I think I've mentioned it to some people. I mentioned it to Joe. I said, Joe, you really ought to go look at it. And he went up and looked at it, and I think the idea at this point is to move repair and repaving up on Seaview Terrace. So that's not what her major complaint is, but I can only imagine the rest of the neighbors would very much like to see that road repaved. So I feel really bad for her. She's obviously very angry, very much in pain about this, very distraught over the whole thing, and I wish there was a way we could make her whole in some way, and it's been a real challenge. And she comes back, yeah, there's no problem. Fire Wayne, fire Joe. It's not going to happen. So it's a problem, and we feel bad for her.
I will say this, that the road is real bad up there. I've mentioned it also to Joe. And today Bob was up there and fixed the road as best he could until something more definite can happen. There was some real problems, but he was his crew went up there and done some work today.
Seaview Terrace is one of the roads we will be trying to pave this spring. One of the challenges associated with Seaview Terrace or any other road that doesn't have storm drainage on it is the cost. The city owns a lot of roads where we don't have storm drains. $220,000 to put storm drains on Seaview Terrace. So I'm not likely to do that because I don't have $220,000 to put them in. $100 to $110 a foot is the installation rate of, and it's over 2,200 feet. But Mike took a look at it. I drove up on it and I agreed it was in bad shape. It was time to redo it. We have a lot of roads in bad shape right now, and I was riding with somebody today and said, I'm really worried these are not going to flatten out, and if they don't, we're going to have a lot more ahead of us this spring because the frost heaves have just been merciless this year. And you don't need to go to Orlando if you want a good experience in a ride. Ride, yeah.
Oh, take 137 to Waterville if you want experience.
Yeah. Joe, could
Yes,
you
sir.
just speak briefly to the scheduling? Every so many years that roads are scheduled, but each year the Public Works Department reviewing the roads to see which one comes up. This one, sometimes one might be on the list for 10 years out, but it pops to 9 and one pops to 11 because of circumstances.
Two things. We generally try to get to roads in Belfast every 10 years. That's been harder in the last 4 or 5 years because of two reasons. We've put less money into roads,
Right.
and the price of asphalt has gone through the roof. So
All
we
for
get less
downtown.
road redone for our dollar. But we have a list and we try to go by it, but before we actually do the road, just because it's 10 years doesn't mean it needs it the most. We inspect the ones that we think need to come up.
I have an email that I'll link. In 2011, he said, Seaview Terrace was in bad shape and needed to be paved.
We go to do them. But
Didn't save any money for sewers or drains, and the paved job he did was corrupt as hell, just like a Band-Aid patch.
it's 10th year or 11th year or something like that, and it needs it.
Joe,
Yeah.
by storm drains, you mean like
Catch basins in the ground.
This is my neighbor, David Smith, sitting here, the back of him. fantastic gray shirt. He's waiting to kiss ass with city council. Wait till you hear him speak against me.
Ditches are effective. Sometimes they're not very popular with neighbors.
Not to mention you're not supposed to speak out of order. You have to only speak it open to the public. But when it's against me, they let anybody speak.